All right. I wonder if okay, I'm live. So, today's video is going to be reading and defiance and why you should do it. So, yes, I'm a nerd. I'm going to talk about reading, blah, 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 blah. Why should you care? Why should you care to read 84, Fahrenheit 451, Raisin in the Sun, other things of that nature? Well, that is primarily because these books talk about social issues, injustices, and reforms or criticisms about all sorts of things in society. So, this is why it's important, especially when you're younger, but even when you're older, like myself or older than I am, you still should read. And primarily because a lot of books talk about different topics. There's all sorts of literature. You have your entertainment, you have ones that talk about specific issues, and you have ones that talk about, better societies or futuristic societies, utopias, X, Y, and Z. And there's all sorts of genres. You have crime, you have romance, you have science fiction, and all of these things are very important. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of each one, how you can navigate it, and especially to those of you who are in high school or in college, where books are being banned from public libraries or from personal teachers' libraries. These are the books you should be reading and why. So again, all of these we're going to cover, and I'm going to try to keep it kind of quick. I'm also going to include some theatrical plays or musicals that you really should be reading because they are phenomenal. And most YouTube has a slime tutorial. In the theater world, a slime tutorial is just like a bootleg or one that you can watch online on YouTube. So I'm going to give you my recommendations. Some of these stories, because they're in public domain, you can read for free on the internet, but we're going to navigate all of that. So first and foremost, I do have my notes here just because I started thinking about it for this video and I want to make sure I get it to you guys in a more clear and concise way. So we're going to start. My dog is in the background. You'll see her Shelby butt throughout the whole thing. But let's just talk about everything as it is. Okay, so first and foremost, reading is powerful. Reading is essential, and reading is important for growth in a person. Now, if you have a hard time reading, audiobooks are reading. I'm just going to say that right now. If you listen to audiobooks, do not feel like you're a cheater. You are still reading. And I know some people will disagree with me on that, but that's one of the hills I'll die on. Sometimes it's just not accessible. Sometimes you have dyslexia. My partner, he has dyslexia. So for him, it's easier to listen to an audiobook or to gather the information that way. Anyways, it's defiance, and I love it. So especially if you're in high school, you are in a very formative time in your life. I used to teach high school. I taught high school from 2019 to 2023. These students are a lot smarter than the general populace or the government want them to believe they are. I had students who were brilliant, who were phenomenal, and really showed an immense amount of knowledge and understanding. So one, you guys are smart. You guys are smarter than you think. You've got this. Number two, with high schools, not so much college, but with high school, they want to ban certain materials. Now, let's kind of get this out in the open with the current administration and book bannings and things of that nature. Do I personally believe that books will be banned? As of right now, I do not. And here's what I mean. I do not think books will be banned from publishers distributing the material. Meaning you could walk into Barnes & Noble, you could walk into Books A Million, and you would probably, at this moment or in the foreseeable future, you would be able to buy these books. Now, what about banned? So if the government decides to ban books, it will probably be through through high schools first. And this will be your 1984s, your Great Gatsby, your To Kill a Mockingbird. But that doesn't mean you still can't read it at the school. The loophole to this, and I found this out because I taught in high school, if the student brings their own copy, it is their personal property. Now, I live in the state of Florida. I taught high school. They were wonderful. There were certain books that I knew may not have been appropriate or that I wasn't comfortable with. However, that's none of my business. It was their private property. I did not take it away from them. And as far as I know, you can't do that at this moment either. So if a student brings in their own copy of, I don't know, let's just say Clockwork Orange, they can read that as long as it's theirs. But if it just means it can't be published through or provided by the school. So I definitely think that you guys need to bring your own copies. Now, I know that's very ableist of me to say because some people may not have the money. Find a Goodwill, find ethical book sources, friends. Again, if you're reading Great Gatsby and it's banned in your library, it's free online. It's through the Gutenberg Press. That one just got uploaded a few years ago. So you have access. There are alternative means and notions. And like I said, audiobooks are reading. They are reading, they are books. Sometimes you can find free trials. I'm not going to say the Pirate Bay, but sometimes there are other ways to get these sources of information. And you should, because 1984 is being banned in a lot of high schools. And why? It's critical of the government. And the whole book of 84, like I've talked about on the channel, is not just about Republicans or Democrats. It's both sides of the coin. They work together. So the Brotherhood and Big Brother, they're the same thing. They're the same government, and we're seeing that now in today's government. There's not a lot of checks and balances anymore. And I don't think there really ever was. I think it was a just general concept to get people going, because I'm in the firm camp that if they wanted to do justice, it would have been done by this point. Words are over with at this point. We have to fend for ourselves, just meaning we have to find the information ourselves. We've got to keep looking at this. So students, I urge you, try and find your own copies of books. Again, this can be through Goodwill, you can borrow, you can do audiobooks, et cetera, et cetera. And they're going to touch upon some heavy themes. 84, I'm going to be frank with you guys as adults, has rape. It has sexual assault. It has violence. It has abuse and torture. Yeah, it's heavy stuff. But as a high school student or a college student, you need that because you have to challenge your beliefs. All of these pieces of literature are going to challenge you. I grew up in Southern Arkansas, Bible Belt of the USA. I still read books about religion. I read Lord of the Flies. I read Great Gatsby. I read Catcher in the Rye. I read all of these books because if you don't challenge your beliefs, you're never going to fully understand an issue. And that's what the government wants. They want you to just kind of go with the flow and think of everything and just be with the status quo. They don't want you to read the biggest one they're afraid of, the Communist Manifesto. Everyone should have a copy of this because everything that a lot of society is saying about, oh, communism is terrible, XYZ. Now, I'm not a communist, but there are some ideas in this book and in this manifesto that just bring light to situations. So again, I have looked at this one, I've studied this one, and again, I read things that maybe I don't necessarily agree with, but I read it to challenge myself. Another one, if you really want some great pieces of literature that challenge society, there are a lot of great ones. A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. This one is all about a teenager in a dystopian future who rapes and murders and kills people for his own sick, twisted pleasure. That's what he does. And it's written in a language that's kind of hard to understand. And it's disturbing. I mean, there is an ultra amount of violence, ultra amount of language, but you see this idealization brought to life. And it's a warning for society not to continue down this path. Because back when the book was written, yeah, a lot of things were happening. The movie by Stanley Kubrick was literally banned in several countries because there were copycat murders of the book. So again, but it challenges society. It challenges your thoughts about what's normal. Let's move on to Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. It's about a fireman who has to burn books. And it's one of those things that it's, again, challenges book banning. It challenges book burning, which was a very big thing during World War II. So it's phenomenal. It's a great book. I definitely recommend you read this one. So it's wonderful. Another one that I am in love with. This one is a play, and I definitely recommend it. It's called Ink. So this one is a factual retelling of how Rupert Murdoch bought Fox News, how he created Fox News. He's a terrible fucking person. And this play explores every intricate part of that. The entire Fox News scandal where they called it news and now they don't call it the news. In small little print, they have to include that this is an entertainment network, not a news network. This play explores that, the legal obligations they went through. And with the destruction of the Fairness Act by Ronald Reagan, covers this one too. It's phenomenal. Again, this one probably has a slime tutorial. Go watch it. It's so fast. It's so like historically accurate that it's so interesting. Another one, if we want to talk about journalism, the lifespan of a fact. Now, again, slime tutorial, you could probably find it online somewhere. It's phenomenal. This is how far journalism will go to make sure the truth is being told, even when labeled as false news, false speculatives. This is phenomenal. So I definitely recommend the lifespan of a fact as well. Now, if we want to switch over from politics into like lifestyles or things of that nature, there are phenomenal stories that you can read. The Normal Heart is a phenomenal LGBT play. Now, me being LGBT myself, this hits home. This is right in the middle of the AIDS epidemic. This is the 1980s. The movie came out like in 2011. Go watch it. Even if you are not LGBT, it will break your heart. It is just an amazingly told story about the actual history and politics of that time frame. So again, The Normal Heart will tear your heart out, but it's worth watching because you have to know the history of these people, my people, in order to understand why we're still fighting to this day. When Ronald Reagan let millions of people die because Reagan said this was a gay disease, that the gays deserve it. They had so many dead bodies from AIDS, they were burying them on islands in New York in unmarked graves. There were straight people who were afraid to shake a gay person's hand because they thought they would contract HIV. That is the lengths and the seriousness that this details. This is why this is important. Read it, watch it. It's phenomenal. It'll break your heart. I love this. Another one about LGBT, The Laramie Project. This book as well, if you do not know, is based on the true story of Laramie, who was literally put on a fence post and beaten to death because he was gay. And this is the actual story of that crime, of that murder. It's heartbreaking. It's an emotionally distraught time, but it's important because you have to know the history. And again, even if you're not LGBT, it's important to know what they have gone through so that way they know why they're still fighting. And even to this day, I mean, literally just the other day, Stonewall took the T off of the LGBT. A transgender woman, Marsha P. Johnson or Henson, literally threw the first brick at Stonewall in order to fight for LGBT rights. A Black trans person threw the first brick. That's incredible that they would try to take her away from that time period. And as much as people want to say that words, are what's going to solve everything, it needs to be peaceful, sometimes you have to resort to violence to get the job done. So again, that is the LGBT aspects of things. If you want to switch over to war, there are phenomenal books about war and how awful it truly is. One of those is All Quiet on the Western Front. This is a depiction of World War I between the Germans and the Americans, and this book goes into great detail about it. This book is not pro-war. This book is the atrocities of war. It is the heart-wrenching seeing your friend next to you get his brains blown out by a gun shell. Like, it's very, very, very hard to read and to stomach, but it's one that you need to read or one that needs to be seen. There was a movie in the 1930s that won the Best Picture award. It's phenomenal. Netflix, I mean, this one was remade from the German perspective and still shows that universal truth that war is hell. And let's just get this out of the way. We don't fight wars for freedom. We fight wars so other countries can have land and power. That's exactly what it is. And that point is mentioned in Slaughterhouse-Five. This book is really difficult to read. I'm not going to lie. I have read books like Dante and things that are very old and in Middle English almost, and this one still gave me a run for my money. This author is phenomenal, and he served in the war, and it shows his mental illness and his post-traumatic stress disorder that he suffered while in the war. So this book is completely anti-war. It is the devastating things that he had to see his friends go through, his comrades go through, and there's parts of this book where he talks about an alien abduction. You have to read between the lines, but at first you think he's going crazy, and then you realize what he's attributing the aliens to, and it's completely heart-wrenching. I mean, when you finish the book, I was in tears, and it just shows how awful our governments and our countries put people through for their own power and their own wealth and their own greed. So again, I highly recommend Slaughterhouse-Five. If you're in high school, definitely read it, but take your time with it. It doesn't seem like it'd be that hard. It's a little challenging. Another one that is phenomenal, Lord of the Flies. So a lot of students read this one in high school or in middle school. If you've read Lord of the Flies, you know exactly what I mean. But this is a group of English schoolboys who survive a plane crash on a deserted island, and they try to use society and politics and rules, and it goes out the window. And this proves that society today is just a made-up construct. It's just a way for people to control themselves and their animalistic behaviors and their instincts. And I mean, I read a study where they said essentially the human population, or the American population, is 3 meals away from complete chaos. And it's correct. I mean, you can't abandon your physical needs on the Maslow hierarchy without everything else going to shit. So this is a great exploration of that book. And I definitely recommend this one. Now, this one is not banned, I don't think, or at least it's not currently on the list of being banned. So check this one out because it's graphic, and some of the murders and deaths are very sad, but it's a really great book. I can go through on and on. If you want to talk about, civil rights movement, that's one that's phenomenal. I mean, it's a genre of literature that just is so heartbreaking. And there's so many books. I mean, you have The Color Purple, which is a phenomenal story. It's hard to read. I mean, it's got rape, it's got incest, it's got violence, it's got murder, it's got all of these things told in such a beautiful way that the messages really hit home. If you have never read it or seen it, please do. Please find a copy of it. There's a musical with Cynthia Erivo. It's phenomenal. The old 80s version with Oprah Winfrey and with Whoopi Goldberg is in it. She's phenomenal. The new movie came out a few years ago that's based on the Broadway show. It is so, so good. Another one that is just phenomenal if you've never read is A Lesson Before Dying. It is about a white lawyer who goes down to the South in his hometown. A black man is accused of a crime he did not commit. And before he is hung, before he is literally hung, the white man stops and just listens to the black man's story and everything he's had to deal with. And it's phenomenal. I mean, it's just heartbreaking and wrenching, and just so many things that one would never think of, that there's a reason why people are reading this book. So definitely read it as well. Another one, Raisin in the Sun, is phenomenal. It's such a good play. Definitely check that one out. And its sequel, its counterpart, is Clybourne Park. This one touches upon the notion of reverse racism. Now, here's what I mean by that. Some people like to claim reverse racism, meaning like, oh, black people are racist against white people. That's explored in this book, but under the name of gentrification. So essentially, Clybourne Park is set in 2 time periods, the 1950s and the 2000s. In the 1950s, Clybourne Park is a predominantly white neighborhood where all the houses are owned by white people, and one black couple tries to purchase the house. They succeed. You see the racial stereotypes, you see the racial struggles between the two, and then the second act is the year 2000. And now Clybourne Park is a predominantly black neighborhood, and a white couple wants to move in, and they want to, redo the house, and they want to be part of the neighborhood. And you see the differences between these sets of people. It also has one of my very favorite jokes in it. And it doesn't hold back. It has got cursing. It has got sexual innuendos. I mean, it covers a lot, but it is phenomenal. One of my favorite jokes from this book is, what do white women and tampons have in common? All I'm going to say, because I'm going to try not to get demonetized, is they're both stuck up. I'll let you fill in the blank. It's fantastic. So definitely read this one. Another one, if you want a really good perspective of Black culture, August Wilson, Fences. This one was made with Viola Davis and, what is his name? I can see him. He was just in the new Gladiator movie. Denzel Washington. Phenomenal show. Also, anything by Tennessee Williams. Tennessee Williams is a wonderful historic American playwright. He wrote Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. He wrote A Streetcar Named Desire. He wrote The Glass Menagerie. I mean, he has got some phenomenal storytelling abilities, and his themes touch upon LGBT and abuse and society. I will never forget going to New York and I saw the all black cast of A Streetcar Named Desire, and holy shit, that was phenomenal. But it's wonderful, and it explores things so naturally in this time period, usually the 1920s, 1910s, 1930s. It is just incredible. It is just incredible. So I definitely recommend those books or plays. I will also say I'm about to read this one, but this is Beloved by Toni Morrison. I know she is a huge author with the civil rights activist and the Black voice, and being able to really speak up for this community. So I'm very excited about this. This is, again, is one that I'm reading after my American Lit class, so that way I have a little bit of time to catch up on all of these stories. Now, if we want to talk about mental illness, that is another thing that is a huge topic in literature from people who actually have mental illnesses. So one of my favorites that makes me just heart-wrenchingly cry is Water by the Spoonful. This play is, I think, like, it's 4 men and it's 3 women. It is set up in a therapy session. Now, hear me out. Each of these actors plays like 5 different characters, and the entire play, when I saw it, was 2 chairs, 2 screens, and behind them was like the chairs of 7 actors. One would play the therapist and one would play the patient, and they would switch, and they would be different people. But it, from people who survived war and people dying, to drug overdoses, to abusive relationships, to parental relationships, it is so heartbreaking. And the reason it gets its title is because there is a drug addict, and she talks about being addicted to heroin, and she talks about how when she was really overdosing and she was using quite a bit, she had a baby. And so in order for her to stay alive, which the baby was probably like 3 or 4, I'd say baby, but like toddler, the toddler would give her water by the spoonfuls to keep her alive and to help get her out of that situation. And this is based off of real internet chat forums. That just is heartbreaking. So again, this is a phenomenal show. Another one that's fantastic is The Boys Next Door. This is about a home of men who range from the age of like 20 to the age of like 40. And they all have, it's not, I don't want to say mental illness, but they all have like either autism, Asperger's, or things of that nature. And they're like an assisted care facility, but they show how, obviously, we know people with autism are people. Everyone's a person. And so it shows their struggles, their strifes, so the good times, them trying to date, them getting prepared for, going out to a party when someone, who one of the characters has autism, and it affects his, speech, and it affects his vision, and it affects his hearing. And so one of his plot points is preparing himself to go to a birthday party, which would seem very simple to someone who's able-bodied like myself, or, maybe one of my friends. But it puts you in that mindset of how does one prepare for that when sensory overloads really hit you. Another one, and this, oh my God, you need to see this one or read this one. It is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. This was based on a book. And the great thing is that the author, I believe, actually has autism or is autistic. This book and play is about a teenager who has autism. He's like 15 or 16. He lives in London, and he loves his neighbor's dog. One day, he wakes up, and the neighbor's dog has a pitchfork stuck through its body. So he goes on the mission to find out who killed the dog. And he goes from the suburbs of London to the big city of London, and it is just visually striking, and it puts the audience in the mindset of someone who has autism. So the lights are very blinding at times. There's a moment where he's in the London subway, and he is just overstimulated, and the audience does too. It gives you anxiety. It gives you that panic attack feeling to show you and to help you connect with this main character. And then at the end, when you get everything is resolved, it's very, very sweet. It makes you cry because it's just like you get that human empathy. You understand what he's going through. And the breakout thing about this show is when it was on Broadway, they actually had an autistic actor play the role. which was groundbreaking, and it's phenomenal. So again, there's actually a book, and I read that back in high school, but definitely check out The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. It's phenomenal. With the deaf community or hard of hearing community, you have the play Children of a Lesser God. And this is all based in the 70s when they didn't have as much knowledge or information about the deaf society or the deaf community. And so it's set in a special school for the deaf. And it shows how the government didn't give a shit about them. I mean, they were working with materials that were too old. Nothing was able to help accommodate for their hearing deficiencies, and how some people took advantage of the deaf community, whether it be sexually or abusively or things of that nature. And I mean, it's a really good show because it just shows the struggle that this community had to deal with, but also how they fought through it. So again, Children of a Lesser God with the deaf community is a phenomenal show. This next one is going to turn some people off, but Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee is a phenomenal portrayal of domestic abuse. Now, domestic abuse is terrible. Obvious fucking late. It's terrible. But this book shows not only physical abuse, but mental abuse, spousal abuse. This book is very hard to read. I read it in college. I had several of my high school students who wanted to read it. It is a tough book or play to get through. It is 3 hours long. The show, you can probably read it. I mean, it's not that hard to read, as you can see. It's very short, like sentence structure wise, but their dynamic is up. The main guy is a teacher at a college. His wife, it's set like in the 50s. They invite this couple over to have drinks with, et cetera, et cetera. And they first start off with like little insults to each other, and then they get worse from there until the husband jumps over the table and holds her by the throat up against the wall and is threatening to kill her. I mean, it gets up to that point. So, and it also shows the little things of how abuse can reach those heights of physical attacks or violence, but also the little things where, you know, calling someone stupid over and over again, or continuing to pick at another person, or continuing to try to make fun of and make their emotions feel like they're just, it's gaslighting, the gaslighting of it. So, but again, this play is phenomenal. It is super, super good. And I definitely recommend watching it. There's a movie version of it out there, so check it out. It is really, really good. If we also want to go into like class and society, and I've already said Gatsby, but another great one is Ulysses. Ulysses is a phenomenal book. It is, I think, 12 different chapters. I gotta double check here. There's a bunch of different chapters in this book, and each chapter is written in a different style. So there's narrative prose, there's like play style, script writing. It's very, very good. This one just is an interesting poke at society. It's very, very interesting. It's definitely challenging. I would recommend it. And then, let's move on with these. And then I would also just have to say The Crucible by Arthur Miller. So The Crucible, when written by Arthur Miller, as you guys know, the Salem witch trials. And he said, she said, blah, 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 blah. But Arthur Miller wrote this in response to communism and the Red Scare. So in our American history, we had McCarthy and McCarthyism. And McCarthyism was essentially General McCarthy, who claimed that everybody who was in Hollywood or agents for the government were communists. And he forced them to go to trial to defend themselves. And he was treating people who were, he thought, communists as witches were being, as women were being accused of being witches back in the Salem era. And so, I mean, it's just incredible. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal book. I definitely recommend it. You have, I know I talked about him earlier, but Tennessee Williams with Streetcar Named Desire, or with Cattle on a Hot Tin Roof. So again, there are a bunch of books out there. There are a bunch of literature out there to read. And you can read whatever you want to. But if you are a high schooler, I definitely recommend checking these books out and definitely reading them. And again, as far as I know from a societal law or governmental law, um, schools or institutions cannot take away your private property. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of common sense that has to be thought about here. If you're reading during class and the teacher's trying to teach, of course, they could take it away for that period. But if you're just reading it on your own, you can read it. There's, no rules against it. Also, Catcher in the Rye is one. It's over there because it's part of my American history class or American literature class right now. But read these books, find organizations or find, start book clubs, essentially, or things of that nature. I know I'm trying to look at ethical sourcing to buy books from. And I say ethical meaning, all of the government and American society is built upon capitalism. And so that's the only way that we're really going to stick it to the man. I know that sounds very cringy anyways, but capitalism in my mind right now is higher than the government. And so looking at who you support your money with, who you decide not to support your money with, really does affect a great deal. So I'm still looking into places like Barnes & Noble versus Books A Million. Obviously, we don't support Amazon, or at least right now with Bezos and everything else. So it's looking at where you can purchase books from. I've been doing research on a website called opensecrets.org, which shows all these huge corporations, their political affiliations, who they donate to, who they don't donate to. From what I found from that website, both Barnes & Noble and Books A Million haven't been donating money through the company's names, but some of the employees or people of that nature will donate their own money to certain political campaigns or different lobbyist groups and things of that nature. So again, still trying to figure this out. I'm by no means perfect. But again, if you don't want to support companies or, with their political affiliations, I totally get that. I'm learning about that right now. But capitalism is where we're going to hurt or really make our voices heard. And again, some people, they can't afford it, and that's perfectly fine. Maybe there's a used bookstore. Maybe there's Goodwill. Maybe you have a friend or someone who can help you with the book. That's amazing. I know I try to provide books to people that I know or people who ask me for books. So that's a big thing. And I know that in Florida, like I said earlier, teachers cannot have personal libraries anymore because I know some teachers were in their personal library had 84 and had Fahrenheit 451 and the Diary of Anne Frank and things of that nature. So again, there's ways to get around it, but we need to be getting around it. And again, this just better helps people understand and have empathy. And you'll hear it all the time. People will say something along the lines of like, we can't do anything. The system's broken. Well, the system's not broken. The system is functioning the way the system is meant to function. It's designed for this reason. If you divide and conquer, you can keep people down. So at this point, by reading these books, you're learning and gaining new perspectives. The biggest thing that we're losing in society is empathy, is relating to others or understanding how others feel. And so all of these books that I kind of just paraded around will give you various things. So all I'm going to say is finishing this long live, and thank you for watching and sticking around with all my ramblings. But this is the big thing that I just kind of want to say to end it, is that reading is defiant. There are books and themes and topics. Reading is defiancy, and you should be doing it. You should be actively seeking out or want to seek out these books, because war is hell. It's terrible. There's no reason to support it. The LGBT rights, those are people. Those are, you don't have to be gay. You don't even have to like them, but by understanding them makes it easier. And it makes it, again, more empathy. No one should have to die senselessly. So that's really what I want to say, like read. And if not, audiobook it or watch some of the movies. The Color Purple, yeah, they leave some things out, but there's still quite a bit of things that are talked about from the book, themes and ideals and the horrible abuse that comes along with these types of issues. So again, I'm kind of pleading because it also just makes better, well-rounded individuals. And for the most part, American society is on the same page, whether politically speaking or socially speaking. We all really have a similar, or hopefully, somewhat similar groups of thought. Of course, you're going to have those who are extremists on either end. And for some reason, those are the ones we're listening to the loudest at this point. Most Americans can usually agree upon a majority of just different things. So, again, I love all of these books and plays. I definitely recommend reading them. Don't let someone tell you you can't read it, because you can. You have the freedom to read what you want. Pick up that copy of The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Pick up the copy of 1984. Pick up a copy of The Satanic Verses. Pick up a copy of Dante's Inferno. Or, pick up a copy of Fences, The Color Purple, or Clybourne Park, Anne Frank. And especially when it comes to politics or looking at society with these books, not exactly everything is going to be verbatim as the books are, but it should give you a roadmap to see the similarities, especially with what's going on in Palestine, and the genocide that is happening. And a lot of people are waking up to that one. A lot of people are realizing the atrocities that are happening to Palestine. So, but again, the deportation of immigrants that's happening in the US right now, these aren't new things. These are things that have happened throughout history, and we need to be educated on them, because right now the education system, not because teachers don't want to teach it, their hands are being tied behind their back. They can't talk about things because, Lord forbid, you make someone uncomfortable. Grow up. Like, come on, grow up. So anyways, I think that's just what I think. It's a long rambling sentence, but read what you want to read. Pick up that copy and read it, or go find it, a free PDF version. Go find the slime tutorial. Go find a movie you can rent, or something at Goodwill. But read, challenge yourself, because if you don't, you're never going to think, and that's exactly what the government wants. So that's just me. I probably may have turned off a lot of people to this, but yeah, please read. Americans they're good people deep down. A lot of them are good people. So we have a lack of empathy at the moment, and we need to fix that. So, all right, well, that's my long ramblings. If you stayed this long, post down below what your favorite book is, one that you might consider, radical or defiant, or really pushes the envelope of what you think. So anyways, that's me. That's Shelby. Phew, back there. Shelby. Yep. All right, there you go. There is my doggo. So alrighty, have a good Friday night, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.